We're continuing to follow King Asvapati in his exploration of all the different realms of existence. We've followed him down into the depths of falsehood and seen him discover the secret key of nature's change, which has enabled him to become free of that illusion of darkness and falsehood, and projected him up into the paradise of the life gods. There he has enjoyed all the beauties and wonders of that realm, which have healed him from the terrible wounds he received in the world of falsehood. But he can't stay long. This canto of the paradise of the life gods is one of the shortest in the whole poem. After he has been healed and strengthened there, the poet tells us that even this realm of divine beauty and bliss must be overpassed. He has to go beyond that. It must be left behind him, because everything must be left behind. Everything must be experienced and gone beyond, except we reach the true end of our journey. So the first part of this next paragraph, Canto 10, it lasts up to line 36. The poet is explaining to us why Asvapati has to go beyond all this. Although it's such a wonderful paradise, you would think we would all wish to stay there forever. But this is only a little output of God's vast delight. There is so much more to be experienced. And the true seeker can never be satisfied. He has to go even further. So this beautiful world is not able to house, to contain all the wideness of King Asvapati's soul, which needed all infinity for its home. So there's a beautiful description at the top of page 239 of how King Asvapati goes beyond, so that that lovely world is just a memory, a soft, sweet memory, soft as grass and faint as sleep. All that beauty gets left behind as he moves further on the long, high road to timelessness. And as he moves forwards, he perceives above him white skies, skies of white tranquility. Large, lucent realms of mind. King Asvapati has left the realms of life behind him, and he's just beginning to become aware of these higher realms of mind, which will be the next area that he has to explore. But before he can move upwards to those brilliant clambering of skies, one after another, higher and higher and higher, first he meets a silver grey expanse, something soft and shining. It's where the day with a capital D and the night with a capital N have united. They have wedded and become one. This is a transitional area, a tract of dim and shifting rays. The light is changing. It's not very bright, silvery. This realm separates the sentient flow of life with all the sense experiences and enjoyments. This gets separated from the realms of thoughts. Thoughts self-poise, the mind settled in itself. So in this transitional world, it says, a coalition of uncertainties. A coalition is when a government is forced to take the collaboration, cooperation of other parties more than the majority party. So a coalition, often like this one, exercises uneasy government. It's difficult for those opposites to come to agreements. So at the lowest level of this transitional world, at its low extremity, held difficult sway. Sway here means control, rule. What is ruling there? A mind that hardly saw with difficulty. It doesn't have a very strong power of vision. And slowly found. It discovers knowledge with difficulty, slowly. Its nature is close to our earthly nature and closely related to our precarious mortal thought, the kind of way that we ordinarily think, our way of thinking that looks from the soil to the sky and from the sky to the soil, but is not really fully aware of what is below it or beyond it. This is a kind of sense mind. It only senses itself and outward things. So this mind, he says, is the first means, the first step of our slow ascent from the half conscience of the animal soul to another realm. Nowadays we believe in the principle of evolution. We know that, we feel that we have risen up from the animal state which is dominated by sense impressions, a crowded press of shape events in a realm it cannot understand or change. Only it sees and acts in a given scene. It can't even choose what it will be the scene of its experience. It feels and joys and sorrows for a while. There are ideas here, ideas that drive the obscure embodied spirit, the spirit which has taken on a body, but which is not yet fully enlightened. Those ideas drive the obscure embodied spirit along the roads of suffering and desire in a world that struggles to discover truth. So here in this first new realm that Asvapati has experienced, those ideas found their power to be and their nature force. And that world is where the forms of an ignorant life are devised. That ignorant life, like our half-formed mind, that sees the empiric fact as settled law. The way things happen to be at the moment, this mind is convinced that everything has to be like that always. So in that realm, it's as if the spirit is a twilight sage. Twilight, again, the meeting of darkness and light. A sage, a certain wisdom is there, but it's mixed. That consciousness believes that his own shadow is his own true self. And it just moves from minute to minute. There's no wider, longer, vaster view. No? And this mind, he says, is dependent on his satellites. He depends on his servants, the senses. This powerful bond slave of his instruments, he says, like this, as if the slave of the tools that he has to use. This mind, this sage, this twilight sage, thinks that his low station, that just the beginnings of conscious mind, is the highest top of things. That consciousness is oblivious, totally unaware of his share in all things made. And the poet says he's haughtily humble in his own conceit. Haughty means proud. Humble means the opposite. But sometimes when you're being humble, without knowing it, you are giving yourself far too much importance. No? Haughtily humble in his own conceit. He believes that he's a spawn, something that's been born from the mud of nature. That's the humble bit. But he thinks he's so important. No? He takes his own creations for his cause. So who is this being? It is ourselves. We are meant to rise to eternal light and knowledge. We have to climb up from our present low level of consciousness, up from man's bare beginnings. We have to break out of the heavy smallness of earth, of the material mind. We must search our nature with spiritual fire. But in that upward rise, like certain insects, an insect crawl cradles preludes our glorious flight. There are insects that develop from ugly little bugs, no? or pupae. But then when they break out, then they have such beautiful wings, dragonflies' wings, and they look so beautiful. So that insect crawl, perhaps we human beings, we're still in that state of developing our glorious flight. Our human state, as we are now, is like a cradle, like a baby's cradle, nurturing the future God each of us is meant to become. Our mortal frailty, our current weakness, which is supposed to become, which is destined to become an immortal force. That's what we have to do. Up from our bare beginnings, we have to rise to this glorious flight and become the divine beings we are meant to be. So I'll read on from there. At the glowworm top of these pale glimmer realms, where dawn sheen gamboled with the native dusk and helped the day to grow and night to fail, escaping over a wide and shimmering bridge, he came into a realm of early light and the regency of a half-risen sun. Out of its rays, our mind's full orb was born. Appointed by the spirit of the worlds to mediate with the unknowing depths, a prototypal deft intelligence, half poised on equal wings of thought and doubt, toiled ceaselessly twixt beings' hidden ends. A secrecy breathed in life's moving act, a covert nurse of nature's miracles. It shaped life's wonders out of matter's mud. It cut the pattern of the shapes of things. It pitched mind's tent in the vague, ignorant vast. A master magician of measure and device has made an eternity from recurring forms, and to the wandering spectator thought assigned a seat on the inconscient stage. On earth, by the will of this arch-intelligence, a bodiless energy put on matter's robe. Proton and photon served the imager eye to change things subtle into a physical world, and the invisible appeared as shape, and the impalpable was felt as mass. Magic of percept joined with concept's art and lent to each object an interpreting name. idea was disguised in a body's artistry, and by a strange atomic law's mystique, a frame was made in which sense could put its symbol picture of the universe. Even a greater miracle was done. The mediating light linked body's power, the sleep and dreaming of the tree and plant, the animal's vibrant sense, the thought in man, to the effulgence of a ray above. Will you start, Joel? Line 101.
At the glow-warm top of these pale glimmer realms, where dawn sheen gambled with the native dusk, and helped the day to grow and the night to fade, escaping over a wide and shimmering bridge, he came into a realm of early light, and the regency of a half-risen sun. Out of its rays, our mind's full orb was born. Appointed by the Spirit of the worlds to mediate with the unknowing depth, a prototypal depth intelligence, half poised on equal wings of thought and doubt, toiled ceaselessly twixt being's hidden ends. The secrecy breathed in life's moving act, a covert nurse of nature's miracles. It shaped life's wonders out of matter's mud. It kept the pattern of the shapes of things. It pitched mind's tent in the vague, ignorant vast.
Thank you. This passage is not so very easy to understand. Glowworms, you know, these are these little, worms. They make their own light. And there are certain times of the year when we go out into the garden at night, and there are fireflies, they fly, but there are glowworms that are just on the ground. And I remember in my country, in England, it used to be possible at certain times of the year to collect these little worms. You could put them in a jam jar, and if you put enough of them, they would make enough light that you could read something. Glowworms. They're called glowworms because they're worms that glow. They make their own light, bioluminescence. So he says that the topmost level of this intermediate transitional world between life and mind, at the top of those levels, that the dawn sheen, the shine of dawn, plays with the native dusk, starting from the dusk, the twilight. Then this dawn light begins to shine, helping the power of day, of light, to grow, and helping that night to fade away, that darkness. Yes, he escapes from that transitional realm. It's as if there's a bridge quite a wide bridge, glimmering. It's also got its own light, shimmering, shining. So he escapes from that twilight realm and comes into a realm of early light, which is ruled by a half-risen sun. The sun is not fully up, not with all its full brightness. And this sun, which is ruling there, which is casting light there, is only a regency. It is not the king, it's not the true ruler, which will come with the next realm, but somebody who's, or something which is taking his place. But from that, those rays, those shimmering rays, our mind's full orb was born. An orb is a complete sphere, no? And an orb is often taken as the sign or as a sign of a ruler. You know, the ruler will hold a scepter, a rod, but also an orb to show his mastery of something complete. So our mind, our human mind, has been born out of those shifting rays. Tara, will you go on?
One way.
Appointed.
Appointed by the spirit of the world to mediate with the unknown depths, a prototype of depth intelligence, half poised on equal wings of thought and doubt, toiled ceaselessly twixt beings hidden ends, a secrecy free in life's moving act, a covert nurse of nature's miracles. It shaped the life's wonders out of matter's mind. It cut the pattern of the shapes of things. It pitched mind's tent in the vague, ignorant past.
Thank you. So how does this full orb of the human mind get born? First of all, an intelligence, a kind of intelligence, is chosen and appointed by the spirit of the worlds, the ruler of the worlds, to mediate, to make a connection, a communication with the unknowing depths, the depths where there is no knowledge, the deeper parts. This is a prototypal, deft intelligence. A prototype, if you're an engineer and you want to make a tool or a machine, you will experiment with different forms until you get one that seems to be as if it will be effective if we replicate it many times. No? This is a kind of intelligence, and deft means skillful. So there's this skillful intelligence. It is itself only a prototype. It's not something fully developed already, but it's on the way towards something. No? And it's been chosen by the spirit of the world. It's going to make this connection between the beginnings of mind and the unknowing depths. And that intelligence is half poised. It's not fully established, half poised. It has two kinds of wings. Wings of thought and wings of doubt, like our own intelligence. When we try to think rationally, we will be using wings of thought, but also wings of doubt, of questioning. Are our thoughts correct? Have I got it right? Have I understood it properly? So this kind of intelligence is, Asvapati becomes aware of it, toiling, working hard and ceaselessly between the hidden ends, the extremes of being, of existence. There's a something secret, a secret presence. Breathes. Breath is a sign of life, no? It wakes up or begins to stir in the movement, in the actions of life. That secret presence. And it acts as a nurse, nourishing, protecting, helping to grow nature's miracles. It is shaping the wonders of life out of the mud of matter. So it's giving birth to living forms out of purely material stuff, substance. That secret presence cut the pattern of the shapes of things, all these many different shapes of living things. And it, as if it establishes a kind of camp, a camp for mind, a place where mind can stay, begin to establish itself in the vague, ignorant, vast, this realm of unclear possibilities. Joel, would you read? Or did you read? Yes. Gopal, will you read?
A master magician of measures and device has made an eternity from different forms, and to the wandering spectator thought assigned a seat on the inconscient stage on earth by the will of this arch intelligence, a bodiless energy put on matter's rope. Proton and photon serve the image I, to change things subtly into a physical world. And the invisible appeared as shape, and the impalpable was filled as mass. Magic of percept joined with concepts art, and lent to each object an interpreting name. Idea was disguised in a bodied artistry, and by a strange atomic laws mystic, a frame was made in which the sense would put its symbol picture of the universe.
So this is one of several places in the poem where Sri Aurobindo gives us a picture of how the world as we experience it has come into existence, as if from nothing. There's been a magician at work, a master magician, and he's such an expert at measuring things and using different techniques, devices. That magician has brought into existence an eternity, something limitless, but it's been made up of recurring forms, limited shapes, which are repeated over and over again. And that master magician has put human thought, human capacity of perceiving and understanding, it's as if he said, you sit there, you just see how things go on. He's given a seat on the inconscient stage. In the old theatres, the really appreciated audience were allowed to sit on the stage. They could see better than everybody else. So he's to this spectator thought, which is wandering around in this world, perhaps not even finding its way. It's given it a seat on this stage of inconscient matter. Allowed this intelligence a place to view what is going on and to try and understand it. So on Earth, on our planet, by the will of this arch-intelligence, which has been appointed by the spirit of the world, a bodiless energy put on matter's robe. Perhaps this is something that our modern physicists would agree with, that first there was only energy, bodiless, shapeless energy. But somehow out of this energy, something more solid and definite has appeared, something that we call matter. And the names we have given to all the small particles that get formed by this energy. Protons are one kind of form, and photons, they're the ones that carry light. These, one is photons, as protons are more solid, photons, they take the form of light. So they use this eye, the power of vision that's been granted to this intelligence, to give it the power to change things that only have a subtle existence, not a solid material existence, to change that into something that we could recognize as a physical world. And things that were subtle and invisible to us appeared in the form of shapes. And things, subtle things that are impalpable, that can't be felt, were experienced as mass. Actually, here, this is what the physicists tell us, no? That this feels solid to us. We feel it as mass. But if we would really understand it as it is, it's just empty space with tiny little particles floating about in it. That is not palpable, that can't be felt. We have to go right down into the structure of matter to become aware of this impalpable. But by this magic that has been done, all this gets turned into a physical world, so that things that were invisible are seen as shapes, and things that are so subtle we can't actually feel them is felt as mass. Magic of percept, of perceiving, the power of perception, joins with the art of conception, of mental thought, of conception. To change, to lend to each object. These are imperceptible things, impalpable things, but we give them names. We say glasses, card, chair, table. to lend to each object an interpreting name. Idea. All this came into existence originally as idea with a capital I. Idea was disguised in a body's artistry. It's given a form that we recognize as a body, whether it's the body of a plastic chair or an animal or a flower or a plant. And by a strange atomic laws, mystique, in some mysterious way that we ascribe to atoms and their behaviors, a frame was made, a framework into which the sense or the senses, the sense of touch or smell or taste or hearing, could arrange in this framework, accepted, recognizable framework. It could put its symbol picture of the universe. That's how we experience the universe, in fact. All these sense perceptions to which we give meanings. Would you like to read?
Sure. Even a greater miracle was done. Mediating light linked body's power, sleep and dreaming of the tree and plant, the animal's vibrant sense, the thought in man, to the effulgence of a ray above, its skill endorsing matter's right technique, cut sentient passages for the mind of flesh, and found a means for me science to know, offering its little squares and cubes of word as figured substitutes for reality, a mummified mnemonic alphabet. It helped the unseen force to read her works. A varied consciousness arose in her, and now she dreams herself human and awake. But all was still a mobile ignorance. Still knowledge could not come and firmly grasp this huge invention seen as a universe.
Thank you. So this framework of perceptions which this intelligence has prepared for us has given us this framework for understanding. But even a greater miracle was done. That mediating light of the intelligence made a connection between several diverse things. The power of the body, the kind of dream state of the tree and the plant, the intense sensations experienced by animals, and the thought in man. These are different things that have arisen in the course of evolution. Some force of existence in the body, then the way that plants and trees exist, the way that animals sense things, and even our human thought. All this gets connected to the brilliant light, the effulgence, the brilliant light of a ray above, a ray of true light which is coming from a much higher level. the skill of that ray endorses, it gives a sanction, it says yes to matter's right to think. Yes, this dumb, blind stuff we call matter, it can become imbued with intelligence and consciousness. It can even somehow cut passages for the body-mind, for the physical mind, to pass through the flesh, and found a means, a way for not knowing, an ignorant consciousness, to know. And one of the ways it does that is by giving names in the form of little cubes of squares and cubes of word. We say chair, table, plant, flower. These are just labels we put on things to help us think, to help us become aware. They don't these words we use don't really say anything about the reality of the substance itself. No?
Why do you say it as cubes, squares and cubes?
Well, if we are cutting things up, that's what we do it. Squares are flat, and then cubes become more solid. No? And so the forms that we become aware of, first they may be flat, but then they become three-dimensional. So these are figured. They have forms and shapes, but they're substitutes for reality. But this consciousness provides a kind of alphabet, a language. It is mnemonic, it depends on memory, but it's mummified, it's something dead and preserved. But nevertheless, this means helped the unseeing force, the blind force of nature, to read her works, to begin to understand what she has done in her creative work. So because of that, a buried consciousness arose in her, wakes up in nature, wakes up in you and I. Now we dream that we are human and awake, even though we're only half awake and only half human. Let's stop there for today. Sorry? Mnemonic. A mnemonic is a little word or a phrase that helps you to remember things. So there's one about the months of the year. 30 days hath September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except February alone, which has 28. That's a kind of mnemonic. It may help you to remember which months are longer and which are shorter. There's another one for the rainbow, the colors of the rainbow. Vibgyor, no? Violet, indigo, blue, and so on. That's a mnemonic. It's something that helps you to remember. So we'll stop there for today.
This art intelligence, is it divine?
It is something that has been created by the divine. I think that's how I understood it. It's been brought into existence as a tool for the creation of the world. Yeah? But it's really not a very easy passage to understand. But I think this canto gets easier as we go on. Becomes things that we can understand more easily.
Did you were explaining author's note? While I think beginning author's note.
Sorry, I didn't.
Author's note.
Oh, the author's note, yes.
No, but the later part.
Yes.
I want to exactly understand.
Yes.
Still, this is not a mere allegory.
Yes.
Characters are not personified qualities,
Yes.
but incarnations or emanations of living and conscious forces. With whom we can enter into concrete touch and they take human bodies in order to help man and show him the way from this mortal state to a divine consciousness and immortal life.
Yes. What would you like to have?
This is Shraddhavan is writing this as something close that is happening.
Yes, he's giving us a key to understand this poem. What is it about, really? So he tells us the symbolic significance of the names of the main characters. But then he says he wants to make clear to us there are certain kinds of poetry that are called allegories. And then qualities like greed or courage or pride are put into a story as if they are characters in a play. So he says that's not what he means with Savitri. What he describes here with Satyavan, the soul that is within us all, carrying the truth. But the soul in each of us has accepted to come into a material body, and so it's accepted to be subject to physical death and to ignorance, the ignorance of the half-developed mind that we have. No? So he says, in fact, these names here, they represent incarnations or emanations. So they are emanations of living and conscious forces. So they're not just characters in a story, in a book. These are real beings who are here in us, with us, around us. And if we understand them properly, they can help us to go beyond being just ordinary human beings. We can go beyond the grip of ignorance and death. They can lead us from the mortal planes here to the immortal planes, to higher planes of consciousness, where we are not subject to death and not subject to ignorance. We can take their help if we want to, if we believe enough. Is that clear?
These are great revelations for all authors.
I'm not hearing properly.
This is a great revelation
Yes.
for me to understand.
Yes. And it's so nice. I mean, we are told, or in some of the letters, we see that Sri Aurobindo at one time had the intention of providing a kind of introduction to the whole poem. But he didn't get round to that. He was so busy writing the poem that finally there was no time left for the introduction. And there was no need left for the introduction because he's given us this author's note, which gives us the key to understand the whole work. At the glow-worm top of these pale glimmer realms, where dawn sheen gambled with the native dusk, and helped the day to grow and night to fail, escaping over a wide and shimmering bridge, he came into a realm of early light and the regency of a half-risen sun. Out of its rays our mind's full orb was born. Appointed by the spirit of the worlds to mediate with the unknowing depths, a prototypal deft intelligence, half poised on equal wings of thought and doubt, toiled ceaselessly twixt being's hidden ends. A secrecy breathed in life's moving act, a covert nurse of nature's miracles. It shaped life's wonders out of matter's mud. It cut the pattern of the shapes of things. It pitched mind's tent in the vague, ignorant vast. A master magician of measure and device has made an eternity from recurring forms, and to the wandering spectator thought assigned a seat on the inconscient stage. On earth, by the will of this arch-intelligence, a bodiless energy put on matter's robe. Proton and photon served the imager eye to change things subtle into a physical world, and the invisible appeared as shape, and the impalpable was felt as mass. Magic of percept joined with concept's art, and lent to each object an interpreting name. Idea was disguised in a body's artistry, and by a strange atomic law's mystique, a frame was made in which the sense could put its symbol picture of the universe. Even a greater miracle was done. The mediating light linked body's power, the sleep and dreaming of the tree and plant, the animal's vibrant sense, the thought in man, to the effulgence of a ray above. Its skill, endorsing matter's right to think, cut sentient passages for the mind of flesh, and found a means for nescience to know. Offering its little squares and cubes of word as figured substitutes for reality, a mummified mnemonic alphabet, it helped the unseeing force to read her works. A buried consciousness arose in her, and now she dreams herself human and awake.